We're now going to be discussing introductory foraging skills, which is a really important primary lesson since weaning is such a big part of the early parrot education.
Well, the whole education of the parrots to start with was focused around weaning initially. And so the primary lesson, foraging, was actually our biggest tool to accomplish the weaning success of our birds. We've always used foraging, but in the latest years we've definitely increased the amount of foraging that we do with our young birds. And there's many reasons for that. One of the most important reasons is that this will be the occupational therapy for the rest of their lives that they're going to do to keep themselves busy, accomplished, and for the rest of their life in captivity.
Right.
In the wild, we know how many hours they spend foraging. It's estimated around 80% of their waking hours are spent looking for food. Whereas in captivity, caretakers used to be so careful to make sure that the birds would have easy access to their food dishes at night times. Times have changed, and now we know that our birds need to be accomplished. And so to give them that potential as well to feel accomplished and to find something is very exciting for birds.
We also have to note that in the foraging device that we have here, it is high performance sticks, it's not seeds.
Exactly. There's a few things here that we should take the time to mention appropriately. One is that we always use the high performance sticks, granules, to do any kind of foraging or during the whole process of the weaning stage. This is what the birds are eating. Of course, the birds are weaning onto an extruded diet. Principally, only in the last stage will they be introduced to enrichment foods.
Right. In which case, in that they would be able to put those into the foraging.
Yes, and this is something that we could do as well. Is replace these by the Tropican example into the foraging devices that we have, for sure. And they will be going through that at a later stage. Yes. Also, very important, Suzanne, that we mention is that we never do any type of education with a bird that is hungry.
Yes.
And no matter at what age the bird is, and no matter what stage the bird is in his education and weaning progress, the bird should never be hungry. We will never use food as a reward neither.
No.
During
vocal praise.
Yes,
eye contact.
We do a lot of mentoring with the birds and a lot of modeling with ourselves. And when we don't use ourselves, we perhaps use a bird that is more agile and has reached a later stage of progress in whichever type of lesson that we're trying to introduce. So it is very, very important because a bird that is hungry will not gain any educational value because he cannot focus on anything.
Since this is an introduction to the foraging for the birds, we can note that the sticks are very obvious and they're easily accessible for the birds.
Yes, the high performance sticks are actually quite useful for foraging devices because they are long and they're easier to start with foraging education than using the smaller granules, for sure.
Right.
Very important also that this accessory that we're using right now is being held by the caretaker.
It's very stable.
Very stable. It's very close to the bird as well. The birds are also standing on another foraging accessory that we'll be discussing afterwards. But there's no difficulty now perching on something that's slippery or trying to reach out because this is very introductory at this point.
Right. Another thing that we can see in the picture is that the caretaker is eating a morsel.
Yes. Usually this is the first thing that we will do, and we'll actually eat a few before we even present the accessory. The foraging accessory or device to the birds when the toy is clean, of course, and the morsels are fresh. We eat a lot of Tropican at Harry because we obviously do a lot of quality control. If you're not confident eating your bird's food, then perhaps you should look into offering your birds a quality food that has quality control on it. Very important also is that the caretaker is not sharing at all the food that he is finding in his accessory.
That would be very unhygienic.
It would be unhygienic and it's not going to create independence to the bird.
Right.
So what the bird needs to learn is that the food does not come from the caretaker's mouth. This is very important, especially in the weaning stages. And you get a lot of regression, unfortunately, when birds leave our care and wind up at people's homes. Because the people want to keep this bond with their birds, so they feel that they have to share food with them in order to keep the bond. This is not what happens in nature at this age. At this age, the birds have fledged from the tree. They're still getting mentored. and they're flying with the parents, very close proximity to the nesting cavity and the nesting site, but they are learning from the parents. So mentorship, modeling, play.
We also notice in this picture that we have 2 mitred conures in here.
Yes.
Which also will help with the process of getting them used to the foraging.
It's very important that we use more than one bird. And if this is not possible within a clutch that you only have one bird, then it's always advisable to get another bird, even if it's a different species. There's a lot of foraging skills that can be learned with our bird sitter videos that are made by World Parrot Trust. There's several videos out there that birds can learn quite a great deal of foraging skills by looking at birds in the wild as well.
Once the birds become comfortable foraging with the accessory in the caretaker's hand,
yes,
it can be moved into the cage. But if you are going to put it into the cage, it's very important that you hang it and not leave it on the bottom.
Yes, because unfortunately these wonderful accessories used for foraging, such as the piñata that you see here, is made of cardboard. And so it cannot be cleaned easily with water because it would destroy it. So it's better that we make sure that the birds don't have easy access to soiling it with their feces, especially if it winds up on the bottom of the cage.
Right.
Should it become soiled, we can simply cut off a piece of it for sure.
The accessory itself, it's very important to note that it is non-toxic. It is made with natural color.
Yes.
And it's very safe for the birds.
Yes, there is no toxic glue in it for birds, and these items are sold in pet stores throughout the world. It's not very complicated to find accessories that can be utilized for foraging. Now, of course, on the label, it is not indicated that these toys are necessarily used for foraging, but with a little bit of creativity, depending on the types of food that you're using to perform this foraging activity, then you can use a lot of the products that are out there that are very safe for the birds. Very important also to mention that once the birds have successfully learned how to take out these high-performance sticks, then what we're going to be doing is complicating things a little bit and then using smaller morsels of our granules and putting them in deeper so that the birds can be more curious and try to find more skill into getting these that are...
Right, it's more challenging for them.
Yes. It's very important to mention as well, Suzanne, that our caretakers, they can definitely use a lot of recyclable materials from home as well, and that's definitely encouraged. And there's numerous things that they can use, but they always have to make sure that they're respecting the rules.
That's right.
Non-toxic matter, and of course something that is cleaned and not soiled. And it can allow the caretaker to create more fun activities, of course, because sometimes financial abilities don't allow us to buy every single foraging device that we would like.
Right. Here we have a paper towel roll.
Yes, and it's great. We cut it and we bent the sides and we've made some holes with scissors, and we've just pulled a little bit of the sticks so that the birds would see that there's actually something in there, but we can use them as a rattle as well. And I find these are really, really fun, and we don't really mind if these ones get soiled too much because they're recyclable anyways.
Here we can see the mitred conure foraging on a cat scratch post.
We love that invention. Of course, cat scratch posts are in our Hagen division for Cadet, and so it's a product that we have a lot of accessibility to at Harry. We use a lot of these for our young fledglings, especially because it's very stable.
Yes.
And so it allows the birds to successfully forage without too much effort, and especially when they're not that agile yet to be perching, we feel it's very, very practical for us to use.
A type of cat scratch post like this would be used outside of the cage.
Yes, this is a fancy one. This is one that actually looks like a table. And this one can be transported too into your enrichment room, where maybe you, as a caretaker, would be watching television. Then it's almost like a play gym. Without being a very exercise expenditure, it is something that the birds are actually doing. But it's very important that we, when the birds are young, especially, that these be brought back to the cage.
The length of time that they're away from the cage is extremely important.
It's extremely important because the birds are still very susceptible to perhaps unweaning slightly. So we want them to make sure that they're always very, very full and have reached satiety periodically during the day, especially, so that they don't go hungry. So this is very important, whereas in the day cage they would have a lot of food,
right,
dishes all around them, for sure.
We can also see that the morsels have been pressed further into the post to make it more challenging.
Yes, and this is the perfect tool also to introduce the enrichment foods. such as the Tropimix and the little morsels of papaya, because we can really, really push them really far down, and then the birds are going to see it because of their color. They're going to be enticed to actually dig for them.
Of course, these enrichment foods would be for later stage.
Yes, well, in this particular mitrid has already reached this independence of weaning, and he's already at the enrichment stage, so he is learning to eat new food items. And so yes, we would be using unsticky, of course, unspoiling food items to put into this type of cardboard foraging device.